Hello all, very good morning. Thanks for joining the session. Let me share my screen. Okay, so hope you are able to see my screen. Let us quickly recap what we discussed yesterday and then let's go to the today's agenda. Right, so yesterday we discussed about the web applications, actually types of web applications, right? So we have discussed about the static website versus the web application, and we have seen the types of web applications, right? That is client side and server side, and then both the ends, like front end plus back end, both the ends. So types of web applications we have seen, and then the static website versus web application we have seen. Okay, this is the discussion we have done yesterday, and also we have seen how the right over the years, how the evolution of the applications, evolution of the application architectures is what we have seen, right? Initially everything is with the backend side, and later the front end library came called jQuery, and again later front end framework came like Angular, React, and then back end service oriented architecture came, right? So all those things we have discussed. A Spring basics we already have completed. Please noted that prerequisite for this is Spring Core. If you know Spring Core, please attend. Otherwise, it is not helpful. Okay, so Spring Core is prerequisite for sure. Without Spring Core, it is really difficult to understand. Okay, so if folks don't know the Spring Core and would like to know the Spring Boot, from 18th onwards, again I'm starting one more batch where I will come from the Spring Core. But in this batch, Spring Core I don't touch. Okay, so this is the recap and today's agenda. Now in today's agenda, let us try to understand. Let us try to understand the Spring Boot. Let us try to understand the Spring Boot. So this is the agenda for today. Okay, so agenda for today is let us try to understand the Spring Boot. Slowly, let us try to understand the Spring Boot. And while understanding the Spring Boot, we also discuss about the various other factors. Fine. So let us try to understand the Spring Boot. So before understanding the Spring Boot, we know what is Spring is, correct? So Spring overview, the Spring framework is a Java-based framework, right, for building the web and then enterprise applications. This is what we have seen. Meaning in our last weeks, we have started Spring Core, and then in the Spring Core, we have seen this. The introduction about the Spring and all we have seen, right? Spring have the benefits like the IOC container, dependency injection, transaction management, and integration ability. So these are the core features of the Spring, right? And also Spring framework can be able to integrate with the other applications as well for satisfying the day-to-day business needs. And Spring also came up with a lot of umbrella projects inside in it, like Spring Data, Spring Batch, Security, Spring Social, Spring Integration. Each and every project can be used for a different purpose. Similarly, like how the Spring Data, Spring Batch, Spring Security, Spring Social, Spring Integration, various applications came in this Spring. Similarly, Spring Boot also came as one more application. So if we can see this, we can see umbrella projects here. So let me copy it and then just let's go here and then see the Spring projects. We can see what are all the Spring projects are available. So here if you can see Spring Boot, Spring Framework, Spring Cloud data flow, right? Spring Batch, security, integration, Spring data. So like day-to-day business needs to satisfy various Spring projects came into the market. Similarly, Spring Boot also came into the one of the other project as the Spring umbrella projects. Why? What is the need of this Spring Boot actually? Okay, so what is the need of the Spring Boot? So let us see what is the need of that Spring Boot. So Spring Boot, what is Spring Boot actually? Let us go and then see here. Spring Boot in the projects, let us go and then see that project. Okay, let me go and then see this Spring Boot. So there is a support given, lot of learning support given, and sample examples also given for learners. And then this is the support, what is the current version, initial release, end of the support, like how till how long the support will be there, right? Every 3 months, almost every 3 months, the Spring Boot is releasing one new version. If you can see here, this is the May to August. For every 3 months, around 3 to 6 months, 3 to 4 months at least, he is releasing the new versions. And learning, this is the reference documentation for learning. If you would like to go and then learn, we can see the reference documentation and then we can learn. So documentation, getting started. So introducing Spring Boot, system requirements, and all is explaining here, and then upgrading from Spring Boot 1.x to Spring Boot current versions. So these are all given. Let's go and then see, not upgrading, just in case. Let's go and then see the understanding the Spring Boot applications. Sorry, getting started. Just go back, getting started. Right, introducing Spring Boot. So this is the documentation given. Right, so Spring Boot helps you to create standalone production grade Spring based applications that you can run. The various words he used: standalone, production grade, Spring based applications that you can run. What does it mean? What does it mean? So Spring Boot helps us to create standalone applications and production grade applications, right? So and moreover, Spring Boot is an opinionated framework with the convention over configuration approach, right? So if we all put together, what is Spring Boot? If we all put together, what is Spring Boot? So Spring Boot, very important. Spring Boot is an opinionated approach of developing the enterprise applications rapidly, right? Spring Boot is an opinionated approach of developing the enterprise applications. Of course, developing the Java enterprise applications rapidly with the standalone support, with the standalone support, and with the production ready features. The standalone support and production ready feature. There is a lot of buzzwords are used here, right? Spring Boot is an opinionated approach, and then rapid application, and then standalone, and then production ready. So these are the buzzwords we used here. What does it mean basically? Okay, first of all, Spring Boot is given for developing the standalone applications, meaning Spring Boot is given which will run as standalone with the production grade supports. This is the beautiful feature of the Spring Boot. What does it mean? So the official website, they are saying Yeah. The Spring Boot helps us to create standalone production grade Spring based applications. What does it mean is, for example, let's go here and let me open one application. Applications. This is the application, Spring Boot application. Why he said standalone? We can run this application using Java space -jar, right? So I can run it like this. When I say Java space -jar, right? Java space -jar, and then this var file name, when I say, it will start as an application. I'm just entering, it will start as an application. That means what? So no further server, no further web server, or no further application required to run the Spring Boot applications, right? Just a simple Java space -jar. The Java space -jar command is good enough to run the Spring Boot applications. That means what? Spring Boot can be run as a standalone application. See this, it started. For example, if you can go here and then type this URL, the URL of it is http://localhost:8087. So just go ahead and then just enter here. You can see the application, right? We can see the application coming up here. Yep, application is coming up. That means what? Did I use any external server like Tomcat? Like, you know, this one, Tomcat in the sense external server, for example, like this. So did I downloaded any Tomcat software? So for example, use Tomcat, and did I added any application inside the Tomcat, like how we usually add? No, no external server we have used, right? And no external infrastructure we have used. Just we run the Spring Boot application as a simple command, Java space -jar, and then the var file of it. Of course, with the simple Java space -jar, how it is working is a different story. We definitely will understand, right? So we definitely will understand how with the simple Java space -jar, how this is working. This is called as an executable. This is called as an executable. When a jar file or var file is executable, that can be worked with the Java space -jar. Usually we call it as a standalone application, right? So using Spring Boot, right, meaning Spring Boot can be run as a standalone application. No external infrastructure, no additional infrastructure or external web server is not required to run the Spring Boot. And yes, production grade applications we can build using Spring Boot by using the various other features like actuators and starters, actuators. There are a lot of other features. Using them, we can build an application as a production grade. Production grade meaning like how we, in order to deploy any application in the production, what are all the things required? Without them, the same production, the Spring Boot applications can run. What does it mean? What does it mean is, let us go to this diagram to understand the production grade applications usually. So production grade applications, create new diagram. Just let me create a diagram. Production grade applications. Let me draw something to give you the, okay. So if it is a production grade application, first thing, we required the highly qualified or high memory servers required, right? So we required the high memory servers or high CPU, right? High RAM size. So these are the servers required to us. Okay. So assume this is that server, right? So assume this is that server. Okay. Server meaning another machine like your laptop, another laptop, or another desktop, or another some other way of infrastructure, right? So this is the server. Now, in order to make our application to be run in this server in the production, what we will do, definitely will connect to a database, right? So we definitely have the database. So the database is in the replication we will maintain. Always fallback mechanism. I'll explain all these things maybe coming up sessions, but the database with the replication we will maintain, right? So there is a high server and then database, and these high servers also will be in the replication. Replication meaning again, fallback, I mean to say. When one server doesn't work, then other server will come into the picture. And what we will take the load balancer. So let us have a load balancer. Usually our production grade architecture, of course, we also have drawn our production grade architecture. So these are the load balancers, right? And network security, gateways, lot of things we will follow. So servers in replication, databases in replications, applications in replication, and then the load balancer here. Replication meaning when one thing not work, immediately another thing will take over. And whatever the data is dumping to one database, automatically it will dump to another database. That is the concept of replication. So as the data is available in both the places, if one database will down and other database can be still able to serve the data to the applications, right? That is the meaning of this replication. So in production grade, we need to run the applications in a replication, right? And then we need to have a load balancer, right? And also we need to have a fallback resiliency mechanism. Resiliency mechanism meaning what? Some kind of a security, or when the number of requests are coming to these applications, those should be limited. For example, 1,000 requests are coming in a second. No, we have to limit it to 100 requests coming to the server. Servers will only accept only 100 requests within the 1 second. So these are all the configurations that we will do in the production systems, isn't it? And also connection pooling, caching mechanism, right? So these are all we will do, meaning simply what I can tell is whatever the production architecture that we follows, exactly that is the production grade architecture. So let me go and then open this production architecture diagram. So this is our production grade architecture. So such a production grade architecture can be built using the Springboard. So let me open this. Let me open this production grade architecture. Yes, so this is what the production grade architecture, right? So it will have the load balancer, it will have the resiliency. Resiliency meaning, again, the rate limit, bulkhead, there are other patterns here, of course. Number of requests that are coming to the backend application will be limited here at the some front gateway level, right? And caching mechanism, right? And as I told, the load balancer, then the server side load balancer, network load balancer, application load balancer, client side load balancer, lot of load balancers we have used. So this is called what actually production grade applications, meaning in the production, the very important factors in the production are, so in production grade application meaning, so in production grade application meaning, the application, right, the application which will be able to build with the number one, high availability. High availability, what does it mean? High availability meaning, this is also called as HA. This is also called as HA, high availability. What is meaning is one or more servers will be used with the application deployment, or with the application deployed, so that if one server will go off, so that if one server will goes down, the another server will come up. Another server will come up. So this is called high availability. And next thing is what? Fault tolerance. Fault tolerance. Again, fault tolerance meaning again the same. If the data from one database is, if the application is failed, okay, so this is what server. High availability meaning server, one or more servers need to be maintained, and also here one or more applications needs to be, one or more application instances, I have to say. Meaning what? Meaning what? Meaning what is here? If you can see, let me open the softwares just in a moment. Let me open this web apps. Right, the same application, maybe you can deploy one more time with a different name, right? Of course, same application, maybe you can deploy one more time with a different port numbers, different host names, but the underlying database might be the same, or underlying database might be in the replication. What I mean to say is this one. So here is the application, here is the application. These two applications are deployed in the two servers. Now what is happening? Request one time might came to this application, and another time request might came to this application. So however, when it is coming to this application and when it is coming to that application, the data needs to be dumped to a common database. Maybe the data needs to be dumped to a common database, right? So when the data will be dumped to, for example, request came to here, then data will be dumped to this database, and request came to here. Again, the data needs to be dumped to this database. And whatever the data dumped here, it needs to be copied onto the other database. This is called replication, right? So this is what the production grade applications basically. For all these things we can maintain, and then we can say it as a production grade applications, meaning fault tolerance. One moment. Right. So one or more application instances needs to be set up, right? This is called high availability. Similarly, fault tolerance. Fault tolerance meaning what? Again, if one application don't give the data, then immediately another alternate application will start giving the data, So this is called fault tolerance. Similarly, what we want actually, replication. Right. What does the replication meaning? When the data will be inserting into one, when the data is inserting into one database, then the same data needs to be copied to another database, which is the follower of the master database. Maybe I'm using some different word. It will be little difficult for you to understand, but replication meaning, yes, 100%. Spring is distributed, right? Spring framework is supporting the distributedness because of these are all the features. Yes, correct. So high availability, fault tolerance, replication, these are all called as the production grade features. So these production grade features will be supported by the Spring Boot. So Spring Boot have the support for these production grade features, right? So fault tolerance, replications, high availability. So these we can set up, or these we can configure in Spring Boot, and the Spring Boot can be also run as a production grade application. Now you got it right. Spring Boot can be run as a standalone application, and Spring Boot have the capability to have a production ready features. Meaning Spring Boot have the capability of the production ready features without any external servers, right? And Spring Boot itself have its own internal server. Of course, we'll discuss about that in a moment of time, but without having any external servers, still Spring Boot is able to scalable. Spring Boot applications are easily scalable. So meaning they will be easily made as a high available applications. How do we do that, sir? Again, we will discuss all these things. And fault tolerance is easily we can address the problem of the fault tolerance in the Spring Boot. And also the same with the replication. We can easily achieve the replication with the Spring Boot applications. So because the support for all these production grade features are given in the Spring Boot with the help of the actuators, right? With the help of the actuators, the support for all these things will be given. Yes, databases get sync every moment and every transaction, right? So every moment, every
with the support of actuators, what exactly are actuators?
Correct. So using the actuators, production grade features we can achieve. Okay, actuators, there were a lot of actuators we have, and of course we need not only actuator, we need to use other concepts as well to achieve the production ready. But Spring Boot have the readily available production ready features. So production ready features are readily available with the help of the actuators. And apart from that, we also can make a Spring Boot application as a production grade application by supporting these features. So two things here we need to understand. What are those two things? Spring Boot have the actuators. So Spring Boot have the, one moment. So Spring Boot have the actuators. So using this actuator, production ready, meaning production ready already existed. Meaning production ready features we can enable. For example, a dashboard or a CPU utilization. For example, want to see the application performance with the CPU utilization and all, right? So we can see. And next is what are the software components we are using? What are the software components we are using? That we can see using an endpoint. So if for everything there is an endpoint actually. For example, /beans endpoint and /env endpoint, right? And then a lot of other endpoints, /actuator, of course, there were other endpoints as well, which will give us the information about the current application status. And among them, yeah, /health, /metrics, is a lot of other actuators we have. These are already readily available. So we can use them, readily available. We can use them. And we can see the health of the application. We can see the software components using in the application. We can see the hardware metrics of the application. We can see the CPU utilization, memory utilizations and all we can see. And many more we can see using the already available actuators. I mean, they are called production ready features already available. Here we are talking about the production grade applications. Both are a little different, small differences there. So these are already available features. These are just production readily available features if you can use. And in order to make an application as a production grade, then we must have to make an application as a high availability fault tolerance replication. So these things, not only using this above available actuators, this is not related to, of course, actuators also we can use, but other dependencies, and by making other configurations, we can make an application as a high available application. But what I mean to say is, Spring Boot can be run as a standalone support application with the production ready features and production grade with the production ready features and then production grade. We can easily upgrade it to a production level, meaning production grade application. We can easily made a Spring Boot application as a production grade application, and it can easily run as a standalone application. See, we have seen no external server or nothing is required. And what is this opinionated approach? Now we need to understand. First of all, in order to understand the Spring Boot, okay, let us quickly do, in order to understand the word called opinionated approach. I believe you might now got standalone. What is the standalone and what is the production ready and then production grade? So I can say it as production ready and then production grade features. So probably now you might got about the meaning of the standalone application and then the production ready or production grade meaning. Now let us try to understand opinionated approach. Very, very, very important. Entire Spring Boot is based on this opinionated approach. If you understand opinionated approach very clearly, then Spring Boot is very clear, meaning very easy also. So in order to understand this opinionated approach, let us do one thing. So in order to understand this opinionated approach, let us first try to understand the traditional way of creating the web application. So first, in order to understand, right? So before understanding this opinionated approach, first let us create a sample Spring Web MVC application, right? And see the problems with it. And then the same application, let's create using Spring Boot, and we'll understand how Spring Boot eliminated or how Spring Boot addresses the traditional development problems. And we need to even understand Spring Boot is used for rapid application development. This is what again we need to understand. Spring Boot is used for the RAD, meaning rapid application development. So again, what is this RAD model, and how Spring Boot is helpful for this RAD model? Let us discuss. But first, we are trying to understanding the Spring Boot definition, at least, right? So Spring Boot is an opinionated approach of developing the Java enterprise applications. So what is that opinionated approach? Now let us try to understand. So in order to understand the opinionated approach, first we'll create a simple WebMVC application and see the problems with it. And the same application, let us create using the Spring Boot, and we'll understand how the Spring Boot addresses the traditional development problems. I know at this moment, probably you don't know what is the Spring Tool Suite, and probably you don't know what is Spring Boot, right? I'm assuming that you are the very new to the Spring Boot. That is what I'm assuming. But though I'm assuming that we are very new to the Spring Boot, just to give you the feeling like this is just to give you the feeling like what easily we can develop the Spring Boot applications. I'm directly going to implement one Spring Web MVC application and then directly implement the same with the Spring Boot, just to give you the feeling like how fast and then how quick we can implement the applications using Spring Boot by eliminating few of the issues in the Spring Web MVC traditional development. Okay, so on later time, going forward slowly, we will see all the aspects of the Spring Boot application development. Okay, now let us go and then implement the Spring Web MVC application. And I know most of you also might not know the Spring Web MVC. Please don't worry. When we start developing our application, right? So when we start developing our application, meaning our Shopify application, when we start developing, Then at that moment, again, I will definitely give you the a very good understanding on this Spring Web MVC. Okay, but at this moment, let me go and then create a simple Spring Web MVC application. So let me, what I'm telling is basically, just give me a moment. What I'm telling is, we have this application, right? What I'm saying is, however, we're gonna implement this application, right? Shopify application, we're gonna implement using the Spring Web MVC here. So at this point, even though you don't know what is Spring Web MVC, don't worry. At the moment of we started implementing this application using time leaf and then Spring Web MVC, I will explain everything what is happening internally. Okay, so I'll make you too comfortable in the Spring Web MVC once we started this development. But at this moment, if you don't know the Spring Web MVC, please don't worry. Okay, so let's go and then start writing the simple Spring MVC application. So all the handouts I already have given, you can see. Most of the handouts, all the handouts from the Spring Web MVC I have given, and I'm keep on updating the materials and then keep on adding the more slides, more material, so you can go and then see. Right, so how to implement a simple Spring MVC application. So just to follow me, maybe you know, and then maybe you might not know how to create it, but just follow me and let us quickly create and then understand what we are doing now and how it can be solved or quickly developed using the Springboard. Okay, so in order to do that, let me first open the Eclipse. In your case, if you are familiar with the Eclipse, you can go with that at this moment. And later in time, I will explain about what is this STS and how to set it up. Okay, maybe going forward, I will explain how to set it up this STS, Spring Tool Suite. There are two IDEs which are having a great support for the Springboard development. One is the IntelliJ, second one is the Spring Tool Suite. Out of these two, IntelliJ is most frequently using tool is the IntelliJ. Most of the developers are using that. But we also, whoever are familiar with the Eclipse, they love to use this STS. So that is the developer's choice. No one will force us like, no, we have to use only this ID, that ID, nothing. So these two IDs have a greater support for the Spring Boot development. However, let us create now a Maven project. Let me go here and let us take a Maven project, and then let me click on next and create a simple Maven project. And the group ID is com.webshopify, meaning the organization for whom we are developing. Right. So artifact ID is we are developing byShopify just e-commerce application. Just I'm giving something like this. And let us choose the var as an application because we are implementing the WebMVC application. Just click on finish. Now, once it got, meaning once the application is created, next what we will do. So this step is done. Next, this step is done. And once this is done, then let us add the Java versions, or a Java version is automatically taken. We don't need to worry about it, compiler and all. So what next we will add is, let us add the dependencies directly. Okay, let me go here and then go here. Yes, byShopify ecom. This is created. Now, if you can see here, we got an issue in the pom.xml file. And of course, see this JRE system library is taken as 1.5. So first, let us change it to either 1.8 or whatever your JDK, you just change it. Right. So click on here, edit, and then mine is JDK 11. So minimum JDK 8 is required. Right. So this is one thing. And next is what? This is a var file packaging we have chosen, right? When it is a var file, it is expecting web archive in the class path. It will expect web archive in the class path. Class path meaning whichever under the SRC. So that is said to be a class path. So inside the class path, when we say packaging as a var file, it is expecting the web.xml file, basically deployment descriptor we call it as. Okay, so let us set it as fail on missing. If it is fail, right, then fail on missing web.xml, set it to true. So let us set it to true so that we will be go off with this issue. Fail on web.xml, let us set it to true. So, and there are two options to solve this problem. In our screenshot, I already have given. So one is either set this fail on missing web.xml is true, or second one is there is a plugin, right? In that plugin, we can set it. So configuration by configuration, either we can set it here or we can set it in the property. So either of the thing is fine. However, now so far we have not taken any plugin, right? So that is the reason. What I will do is I'll take the properties, and in this property, I'll set this fail on missing web.xml is true. Sorry, if the missing web.xml, right, fail on missing web.xml is false, don't fail, don't report any error if there will be no web.xml found in the class path is what we are instructing here. Okay, observe how much work we are doing. Please observe. Now let us add the dependency. So far we don't have any dependencies, so let us add the dependency. Now group id. So let us add the dependency. Spring dependencies let us add, because Spring WebMVC application we are developing. org.spring framework, org.spring framework, and Spring WebMVC. Let me go and then check these dependencies. So Spring WebMVC is the dependency. Yes, that we will add. So for a sake, let me go with this version only. 4.4.3.18. Release. Of course, current version is 5.20 something like, but sorry, current version is 5.17, and but I'm using 4.3.18 for just to understanding the how much effort we need to do in developing a simple Spring WebMVC application. Of course, we can take the latest one, right? So how to set the dependencies? So just we got this pom.xml file, right? So this is our pom.xml file. Like this, you will see. So there is a button called dependencies. Go here and then add dependency. And here we can add the dependency. So org.again Spring framework, org.spring framework, and then Spring WebMVC, and then version is 4.3.18. Release. Let's take, and the scope let us take as the compile. So if you can see here, let us take the scope as compile. So there is a various scopes available here. Scope is compiled, scope is provided, scope runtime, scope test system. Of course, these about the scopes I will discuss maybe later in time. At this moment, my focus is on making a simple application. But when you say scope is compiled, that means what, the jar file, whatever we are adding here, right? The dependency, whatever we are adding here, that dependency is also inside the application build. What does it mean? So we are now creating one application, isn't it? That application we will build as a jar file or maybe as a var file. Of course, we have chosen the packaging as a var here. So whatever the application now we have created, right? Shopify e-com application, this application we will build as a var file. So in that var file as well, we can see this jar file called Spring WebMVC. So that is called the compilation. That means even though after the application has been built, inside that application build also the dependency will be present. And if it is the runtime, then what will happen, the dependency won't be present once after the build has been created. The dependency will be retains or used till the application build, but won't be present after the application build. And provided meaning the external server or external container will provide it. For example, Servlet dependency is there. Servlet dependency, when we add Servlet jar, we no need to add it with the compiler. We no need to add it the runtime. We can add it with the provided, because what when we take a Servlet dependency, in order to run that, we require a Servlet container like Tomcat, right? So those containers are by default coming up with these jar files. Actually, Tomcat is by default coming up with the, if you can go and then see the Tomcat library, you can see the Servlet.jar and then JSP.jar. Of course, JSP don't be, JSP-API.jar. So these are the jars that are coming up by default with the containers, right? By default, these are the jars coming up with the containers. So we no need to again mention like, I want this jar file to be inside my build. So that is the reason we have to make it as a provided if it is in the case of the Servlet jar file. However, let me choose the compile, click on OK. Click on OK. Yeah. So see this, now we got this one. Now let me go to dependency hierarchy. We just have added this dependency, right? So let us have to save it first. See this, it is not saved. Let me save. Right, I saved it. While saving, the workspace building we got, meaning it is building the workspace, downloading the dependency, and then building this workspace. Now let us go to this dependency hierarchy. See this dependency hierarchy. What is happening? We just have added only one dependency, but got pulled all these dependencies, right? Spring core, context, beans, AOP, and expression. This is nothing but the core container, isn't it? Spring AOP, beans, context, core, expression. This is nothing but the core container, right? And then see this, Spring core is depends on this common slugging. So common slugging, AOP, beans, context, Spring core, Spring expression. This is said to be a Spring core container, Spring core container, and Spring web and Spring web MVC. So when we add the Spring web, meaning web MVC, when we add it, then we got the Spring web. So Spring web MVC, it depends on the Spring web, right? So this is called as transitive dependencies. This is called as what? Transitive dependencies. That means what? When we add only one dependency, just we added the web MVC. Now what happened? What happened? Web MVC have the dependency on Spring web. Now if you can see here, let me again go back here and then come back here. Now see what happened. We just added web MVC, right? So web MVC have the dependency on the web, and web have the dependency on AOP, beans, context, core, and beans have the dependency on the common siphon login, right? So BOM is different. I'll explain about the BOM, bill of material. I'll explain later in time. BOM is different. BOM is different. Transitive dependencies concept is different. Okay. So of course, both can be related, but BOM is different concept. Fine. Now, if you can see here, when we add the web MVC, automatically we got the all other dependencies pulled up. This is called a transitive dependency. So web MVC, when we add, it requires the Spring web. So Spring web has been pulled, and Spring web requires the Spring core, context, and then beans. So it also pulled the AOP, and then the Spring beans requires the common slugging. Sorry, Spring core requires the common slugging. So common slugging also pulled up. So that is what the transitive dependencies. However, if you can understand carefully, while we are developing the traditional Spring Web MVC application, the version, whatever the version we have given, it is the developer's choice, meaning we have to give the version. Developer have to give the right version of the dependency when we are developing the traditional web application. Right, while developing the traditional web application, it is the developer's responsibility to give the versions. Right, now let us go to pom.xml file. See, this is our final dependency added. Here group ID meaning basically organizations for whom we are developing this application. See this com.vshopify, right? vshopify is the organization for whom we are developing the application. vshopify.com is the organization for whom we are developing the applications. And artifact meaning the name of the application. Artifact meaning the name of the application we are using. And this version is used for when we are giving the different builds, right? For example, we are now developed version 1 and done some changes. Again, we need to release it as some other version. Again, we need to release it as some other. So the snapshot, the version is specifying what is the version of this application now. And of course, this version might be upgraded with the keep on changes. Okay. And the packaging var meaning whatever the application we have created now, it can be able to build as a var file, web archive. Okay. Now we were added these dependencies. Now let's go to handout and then see what is the next step. So we were added these dependencies. Why I'm referring handout? Because you guys, whenever you go and practice, you can just do this step-by-step activity. Now the next is what the Java x.servlet is required. Sorry, Jstl is required. Jstl. So Jstl, the current version and the last version is 1.2. So let us also add the Jstl. So Jstl is belongs to the Java x.servlet package and then Jstl. Sir, why this Jstl, sir? Why? Because we will use some tags actually to render some data. And let us go with the compilation mode, because after building the var file also, this Jstl needs to present inside that var file. So just click on OK and then just add one more dependency. Now this is called Java x.servlet, and then let's take the servlet API. Let me go and then check. So this Jstl is done. Now let us take the Java x.servlet API 3.1.0. So Java x.servlet API 3.1.0, and here the scope is provided. Scope is provided. That means what? Scope is provided. That means what? Wherever our Springboard var file is, sorry, wherever our traditional Spring Web MVC var file is running, right? Obviously, that traditional Spring Web MVC var file will run definitely inside a external container like Tomcat. So the Tomcat is already having this servlet API dependency. So we no need to have again this servlet API dependency inside our application var file. So that is the reason we are making it as a provided. So provided meaning container where the application is running, that will provide this dependency. But while developing, this dependency is required for us. Just click on OK. Now save. Once after you added everything, just save. So again, all the dependencies are getting downloading, and yeah, this version might be not missing artifact Java. No, it is not Java. It is Java X. Let me go here. Java X.servlet. Just click on OK and then save it again. Now the problem will be solved. Yes. Let's go to pom.xml file. Now these are all the dependencies that we were added, right? Did you observe one thing? What is the dependency we need to add, and what version of the dependency is the developer's responsibility while developing a traditional web application using the Spring Web MVC? So this is the point you need to understand. Next, of course, in my handout, I have given enough explanation, right? So why we have taken the artifact ID and then version, group ID, pom.xml, right? All this enough explanation I have given, right? Then scope also I have given little difference in the scope of the solid API. So the information I provided, just go and then verify in the handouts. Now we were added the dependencies. So those dependencies we can see here in our application as well, like Marvin dependencies. So go here and then see, these are all the Marvin dependencies, right? So Java X Solid, Jstl, Spring Web, Expression. So these are all called as the Marvin dependencies now. However, that is fine. Now let's scroll down and then let us, our website looks like to be, meaning what are the web application now we are implementing using traditional web MVC. That application looks like to this one. Okay, so let us go here. And in order to come this application like this, so we need to have the JSP, isn't it? We need to have the JSP. So once you guys registered, then I will give the access and you guys can come and then download this material again. So once you registered, I will give the access here. Okay, then you guys can download this material. Okay, so once only the register, then you will get the access for these handouts. Okay, however, this is a JSP, right? So that JSP, in order to maintain, let us create one folder, that is the WebInf JSP, right? So inside this WebInf, let us create JSP. There, let us add this welcome.jsp. So for that, let's go here and then right click on our application, right? This is what we are now building. Right click on the application, go to this Java EE tools and then generate deployment descriptors tab. Just click on this. So once you've done that, then you will see the web app folder, WebInf folder. By default, in a Maven application, you don't see this web app folder, web app and then WebInf, right? So in order to get these two folders, right click on the project, go to Java EE tools, and then click on this generate deployment descriptors tab. So this will generate the deployment descriptor, but we don't want this deployment descriptor for a while. So let us not worry about this web.xml file, but at least we want the WebInf, web app, WebInf. So here let us create the one more folder called views. Let us create one more folder called views. Carefully observe how much effort we are putting in developing this. Okay, so now we were done this one. Now again we need the welcome.jsp. So welcome.jsp is looks like this. I'll explain how this welcome.jsp is. So I'm just copying the existing content because to type here and then showcase, it will take little time and we will be deviated with our motto. So that is the reason I'm just using the existing code base just to explain you at this moment the difference between the implementation effort between the the Spring Boot and then the traditional Spring applications. So it is the welcome.jsp, right? So let me take this entire content and then click on finish. Of course, there is other content also came. The first thing is what I need to add here rather than copying everything. Let me type. So as we are using the Jstl, right? The first thing is what I need to have this Jstl. So just percentile @taglib and URI is equal to, we can see the Jstl, right? So Jstl core, right? Yes, Jstl core and java.sun.jsp Jstl core, and then prefix is equal to C. So by default, we got this prefix. Now what we can do here in the body. So in the body, of course, we can have this CSS. So maybe the CSS let us have, right? Just to have a little, looking good UI. So let us have this CSI. Let us have this CSS link, copy, and then let's have this CSS. Okay, so let me again type link by link, otherwise link by link, and let me quickly type it link by link, right? And then style sheet, and then after this href bootstrap related link it is, right? Bootstrap related thing, and then let us close it, right? This is the link. Now as we got this link now, right, we can use some CSS features here. So one is the jumbotron. So let me use one div here, partitioning the JSP as a divisions. And now as we got the CSS, we can use the CSS classes. So one such CSS class is jumbotron. So jumbotron is the CSS class. Of course, we don't need to worry about this, but jumbotron, yes, jumbotron. And here we can have some printing. For example, h1, let us print some data which we got from the controller. I'll explain all these things in a moment of time. Just you follow me, how much effort we are putting in just writing a simple Spring Web MVC application. Okay, h1 and greeting. So we have the dollar. What is this? Dollar and then greeting. Fine. So this is good enough. Then why it is saying that's okay. So maybe it will be resolved. So what it is saying, encountered end of the file was expecting integral literal floating. So it is saying some identifier mismatch, something like that. So let us do one thing. Let us have this one, and then greeting. Okay, so however, this is not accepting. It should have to be accept, but let me go and then see why it is not accepting. Okay, so we also let us add a couple of meta char set. See this meta char set, let us add. So right click on it, copy. So let's go and then add this meta char set. Of course, here meta char set is ISO, but we want the meta char set as not ISO. We want the meta char set as UTF-8. So let us take UTF-8. Right now, special characters will be supported when we take this UTF-8 text. That is the one meta char set. And of course, Jstl are not required. So let's go and then continue. Fine. So this is the view page that we were developed. That is welcome.jsp. Right. So view page is developed. Now welcome.jsp is developed. I believe you don't know all these things at this moment. Just follow me. Error in link tag. Yes, here is the error in link tag. Right, perfect. Right, so now greeting. Right, thank you. So now we resolved it. Next is what? Next we gonna write one controller. Next we gonna write one controller. Carefully observe what we have done here. We have written one JSP, and next we gonna written one controller. So for that, let us create a package. The package is com.bshopify. com.bshopify. Minimum 3 package, base package should be with the minimum three words. com.bshopify. E-commerce, and dot, let us take the controller, and let us also take one more package. That package is com.bshopify.ecom.config. So let us take these two packages. Okay, minimum 3 words should be there. Okay. Yes, yes. Spring Core videos will be available. Once you guys can register, then Spring Core videos will be shared with you. Fine. So now we have created the package, right? 2 packages we have created. Then next what? Next what is, let us write this home controller. So for a time being, I'm copying everything from here to there. Okay, again, rather typing, I'm just copying everything from here to there. So just going here in the controller and just pasting here. Now we got this one, Control A, Control F, and of course, let me, while copying, it got some issues, right?
Copy, just copy to notepad and then paste here.
Yeah, that is better. So let us go and then copy to notepad. No, notepad also it is not giving. However, I can download and then copy the content, or else let's quickly write it. It won't, just don't take much time. Just let me delete this. Okay, and let us write one class, home controller. Okay, home controller. Let us write home controller, right? And then let us annotate the request mapping. Please don't worry at this moment. I'll explain what is this controller and all. Let us discuss about these annotations. These are called as stereotype annotations. I'll discuss about these annotations later on time, but don't worry at this moment. Okay, and then let us write one method, that is public string greetings. Just a simple message, public void greetings, and let us take one model object. So again, what is this model? We don't know. Don't worry. If you don't know what is this model, that is okay, no problem. So I'll explain. Return our view page is what? Welcome is our view page. And here, let us write one greeting string. Greet string is equal to welcome to we Shopify e-commerce retail platform. This is just a string, and let us add model dot add attribute, and the key is what we are using in this JSP to print greeting. So greeting is the key. So greeting is the key, and then its value is the greeting string. Okay, finally, let us go back to the page called welcome. Okay, so we developed this controller. Now controller development is done. So what we have completed now, we have completed the, don't worry, I'll explain all these things. We have completed the JSP, we have completed the controller. Now, this is good, but this controller needs to be identified by the Spring framework, right? So this needs to be identified. Controller needs to be called by someone else, isn't it? And in the controller we written, go to this welcome.jsp, but who has to take? Controller really don't have that capability. Someone should have to be locate this welcome.jsp. Who is that component? So that component is called dispatcher servlet. So dispatcher servlet is the component which will map the incoming request to the handlers. Handlers nothing but our controllers. You can say handlers nothing but our controller. So dispatcher servlet is doing what? Mapping the incoming request. For example, the request we are giving http://localhost:8080/ right? Maybe 8080/login. So this request will be mapped to login controller behind the scene by this dispatcher servlet. So again, about this dispatcher servlet and all, I'll explain going forward classes. Okay, so that's all for today, folks. And I have to join to one meeting. Let us continue rest of the part tomorrow. And tomorrow, let us implement this, complete this Spring MVC application and understand few problems here. And then let us implement the Spring Boot application and then understand how the Spring Boot application minimized this one. Okay, so that's all for today, and then see you tomorrow.
Sir, how many packages we created?
So right now, just 2 packages we created. This is not our real application. This is not our real application. In real application, packages. Okay, we'll take many packages in real application. Okay, guys, I have to jump to another meeting. See you tomorrow at the same time.